Everyone told me to forgive my cheating fiancé, so I took back everything they took for granted. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought the biggest problem in my life was keeping two department heads from blaming each other for a failed software launch. I had no idea one early flight home would destroy my engagement and expose the people I trusted most. I'm a software engineer. My life wasn't built on luck or overnight success, but on years of careful work and 2 inheritances I would have gladly traded to have my grandparents back. My grandmother left me a small 3-bedroom house. It needed months of repairs before I turned it into a rental instead of selling it. 2 years later, my grandfather left me his beach cottage. It wasn't luxurious, but the view from the back porch was enough to make everyone want to spend weekends there. Before long, it became the unofficial gathering place for my entire friend group. Everyone knew the gate code. Most of them knew where I kept the spare key, and I never thought twice about it. They were my friends, and sharing what I had felt natural. Ethan Cole used to tell me that was one of the reasons he loved me. "You make everyone feel like they belong," he once said. Back then, I believed him. We'd been together for 4 years and engaged for 8 months. He proposed at the beach cottage one autumn evening with nothing but a bottle of wine, my grandfather's porch lights, and a promise that we'd bring our future children there someday. 8 months later, I came home and found him in our bed with another woman. A work trip ended a day early after my flight was rescheduled. I decided to surprise Ethan instead of telling him I was coming home. I imagined picking up dinner, opening a bottle of wine, and spending a quiet evening together. Instead, I unlocked the apartment and immediately noticed a pair of black heels beside the front door. At first, I searched for harmless explanations. Maybe Vanessa had stopped by. Maybe someone from work needed help. Then I heard a woman laughing in our bedroom. It wasn't the kind of laugh you make with a coworker or an unexpected guest. It was intimate, and before I reached the end of the hallway, the bed slammed against the wall. I froze. A framed photo of Ethan and me from the day he proposed at my grandfather's beach cottage hung beside the bedroom door. I stared at it for a heartbeat, then pushed the door open. Ethan was in bed with Olivia Hayes, one of his co-workers I'd met at his company's Christmas party. Olivia rushed to get dressed while Ethan stumbled off the bed, his face draining of colour. "Claire, this isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed. People only say that because they know exactly what it looks like. I looked at Olivia. "Leave." She muttered an apology, grabbed her things, and hurried out without looking at me. As soon as the front door slammed, Ethan stepped toward me. "Please, let me explain." "You have 1 hour." He frowned. "What?" "Pack a bag and leave." It was a mistake. "A mistake is sending the wrong email. You brought another woman into our home." I insisted it only happened once, that he was drunk, that things between us had been different lately, and Olivia had kept pushing him. "I don't care what Olivia did," I said quietly. "I care that you climbed into our bed and still expected to marry me in June." For a split second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I noticed Olivia's earring on my pillow. 59 minutes. I waited in the living room while he packed. He tried twice to talk. I ignored him both times. When he finally walked to the door with a duffel bag, his eyes were red. "I'm staying with Vanessa." "Fine. If you need the rest of your things, you'll arrange it with me first." "This is our home. The lease is in my name." His expression hardened. "So that's it? 4 years and you won't even listen?" "You had plenty of time to explain before you took off your clothes." I left without another word. The silence lasted less than a day. By the following afternoon, my phone filled with messages, not from people asking if I was okay, but from people defending Ethan. Marcus, one of the friends renting my house below market rate, said I was throwing away 4 years over one mistake. Daniel insisted Ethan deserved a chance to explain. Vanessa told the group chat Ethan regretted everything and begged me to hear him out. Soon everyone joined in. They talked about forgiveness, relationships, and how I was making a decision while I was emotional. Not one person asked how I was holding up. Not one person said they were sorry I'd been betrayed. Every ounce of sympathy belonged to Ethan. I replied with a single message. "I appreciate everyone's concern. I need some time." Then I put my phone away. They thought I was deciding whether to forgive my fiancé. I wasn't. I was thinking about the rental house, the beach cottage, and every door I'd spent years opening for people who had just shown me exactly where their loyalty belonged. The next morning, I woke to 23 unread messages. Most came from the group chat, where Vanessa insisted Ethan was taking responsibility, and everyone else urged me not to end the engagement without hearing the full story. As if there were another version of what I'd seen. I stopped reading, walked into the bedroom, stripped the sheets from the bed, and carried them straight to the dumpster. Olivia's earring was still on the nightstand, so I slipped it into an envelope. I wasn't keeping it out of anger. I simply wasn't ready to throw away the proof of what had happened. Marcus, Daniel, and Vanessa called one after another. I ignored every call. Instead, I opened the lease for my grandmother's rental house. Marcus and Daniel had lived there for 3 years, paying just $1,100 a month for a house worth nearly $1,900 because I'd always considered them family. I'd covered repairs, waived late fees, and never once raised the rent. Now those same friends were more worried about Ethan than about me. The lease was simple, month to month, 30 days notice. I closed the file and opened another containing the documents for my beach cottage. My friends had never signed anything because they'd always been guests, yet over the last year they'd started acting like the place belonged to all of us. They invited other people without asking, shared the gate code, and treated my grandfather's home like a free vacation rental. Standing alone in my kitchen, I finally admitted something I'd ignored for years. I'd mistaken tolerance for kindness. Every time someone crossed a line, I'd laughed it off because confronting them felt harder than staying quiet. Over the next 3 years, property values climbed, but I never raised Marcus and Daniel's rent. Whenever my mother questioned it, I gave the same answer. They're my friends. Now those same friends thought I was overreacting to Ethan's affair. I reopened the lease. I already knew what it said, but reading it again made the decision feel final. That was all I needed. Next, I pulled up the file for my grandfather's beach cottage. There had never been contracts because my friends were guests, or at least that's what I'd believed. Over the past year, they'd started treating the place as if it belonged to everyone. Marcus invited co-workers without asking. Vanessa left the house trashed after a birthday party. Daniel shared the gate code with family, and one afternoon I found strangers staying there who looked surprised to see me. I'd laughed off every incident because confronting people felt harder than letting it go. Not anymore. My phone rang. Ethan. I ignored the call, but a voicemail followed. Claire, I know you're angry, but Olivia meant nothing. I was drunk, we'd been struggling, and I honestly felt like you were already pulling away. I stopped the message. We'd argued twice in the previous month. Once because he'd taken nearly $3,000 from our wedding fund without telling me, and once because he'd skipped dinner with my mother after promising he'd be there. Apparently, that was enough for him to justify cheating. I played the rest. I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying we had problems. Vanessa thinks we should all sit down. Everyone's worried about you. That line stayed with me. Everyone was worried about me, yet no one seemed worried about what Ethan had done. They weren't afraid I'd been betrayed. They were afraid I wasn't reacting the way they expected. I deleted the voicemail and called Rachel Morris, the property manager who handled my rental house. I need to terminate the Hawthorne Street lease, I told her. She checked the file before asking, Marcus and Daniel? Yes. They're paying well below market. Are you sure you don't just want to increase the rent? I'm sure. She didn't push. I'll prepare the 30-day notice today. They'll probably call you. I know. They'll ask why. Tell them exactly what the notice says. The owner is ending a month-to-month tenancy, nothing more. When we hung up, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt relief. I changed clothes and drove to the beach cottage. Everything looked exactly as I remembered, and that somehow made it harder. Every corner held memories of weekends with friends, family dinners, and the night Ethan proposed on the porch. Funny how good memories can start hurting the moment you realize they were built with the wrong people. I spent the afternoon changing every lock, resetting the gate code, moving the spare key, and installing security cameras. By the time I finished, the cottage didn't feel empty. It felt like mine again. My phone had been buzzing non-stop, but I ignored it until I finally opened the group chat. More than 60 unread messages waited for me. Marcus wanted me to call before I made a mistake. Vanessa insisted blocking Ethan wouldn't erase 4 years. Daniel claimed everyone was only trying to help. I typed one final reply. I need space from anyone who thinks supporting me means convincing me to forgive the man who cheated on me. Please don't contact me again for a while. After leaving the group chat, I blocked every one of them, including Ethan. Blocking their numbers didn't stop them from finding other ways to reach me. It only made those attempts more creative. I stood alone on the porch listening to the waves, and for the first time since opening that bedroom door, I felt something that almost resembled peace. It lasted less than 2 days. The eviction notice reached Marcus and Daniel the following afternoon. By Wednesday evening, my mother called. Honey, Marcus says you're making him homeless. What happened? I told her everything, from Ethan's affair to the messages, the pressure to forgive him, and my decision to take back the rental house and beach cottage. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Good. I actually blinked. Good. You've spent years giving those people more than they deserved. They stopped seeing your kindness as generosity and started treating it like an obligation. For the first time, someone understood. Before hanging up, she added, Marcus says they aren't giving up. They'll keep trying until you agree to talk. She wasn't wrong. The next day, my sister told me Daniel's girlfriend had asked whether I was having some kind of breakdown. On Friday, a coworker mentioned a man matching Marcus's description had been asking questions about me near the office. By Saturday morning, they stopped asking through other people. Someone began pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. Ethan stood at the front of the group. Behind him were Marcus, Daniel, Vanessa, and 2 other former friends. They weren't there to check on me. They were there because my decisions had finally become their problem. I kept the door locked. "What do you want?" After a long silence, Ethan spoke. "Claire, please. We just want to talk. This has gone too far." 5 weeks earlier, every one of them could have walked into my apartment without knocking. Now I couldn't imagine opening the door. "I don't have anything to say?" Marcus stepped forward. "Come on, Claire. We've been friends for 12 years. You chose Ethan over me in less than 12 seconds. The hallway fell silent. Daniel finally said, "This isn't about taking sides. We just think you should hear him out before making a decision you'll regret." I let out a quiet laugh. The affair wasn't enough of a decision? Ethan made one terrible mistake. And the rest of you made a choice after it. That's the difference. Ethan tried again. "I know I was wrong. I agree. But you haven't heard everything. I walked into our bedroom and found you with Olivia. Then you looked me in the eye and told me it wasn't what it looked like. What exactly am I missing?" I panicked. "You expected me to ignore what I saw." I was terrified. "I don't care." The words surprised even me because they were true. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. He lowered his voice. "Olivia meant nothing." I shook my head. "That isn't the defense you think it is. It wasn't emotional. So cheating without feelings is supposed to make it better." I had no answer. Vanessa finally stepped in. "Claire, I know you're hurting, but ending everything this quickly." "There it is." "What?" "The part where everyone tells me how I should have handled being cheated on." "No one's attacking you." "Really? Not one of you asked if I was okay? No one asked how I'd slept or whether I could even walk back into my own bedroom. You skipped all of that and went straight to defending Ethan." Marcus sighed. "We're trying to save 4 years. You should have told him that before he slept with someone else." The hallway went quiet. Daniel was the first to break the silence. "So, about the rental house." I almost smiled. So that was why they'd come. Not because they missed me, but because they needed something I owned. "What about the notice?" Marcus asked. "The eviction. You got it. We thought you acted out of anger." I didn't. Marcus took a step closer. "We can't find another place anywhere near that price." "I know. You know, I know exactly what market rent is. I've been charging you far below it for 3 years. Because we're friends." "Were." The word hit harder than I expected. Daniel tried a different approach. "We'll pay more, whatever you want." "The house isn't available anymore." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm selling it." It was a lie, but they didn't need to know that. The shock on their faces told me everything. They weren't afraid of losing a friend. They were afraid of losing cheap rent. "You're doing this to punish us?" Marcus asked. "My house, my decision." "Claire, be reasonable," Daniel said. I couldn't help smiling. Interesting. I was unreasonable for refusing to forgive cheating. And now I'm unreasonable for deciding what to do with my own property. Before either of them could answer, Tyler spoke up. "What about the beach house? I went there last weekend. The gate code didn't work. I changed it. And the locks. Those too." "You can't ban everyone." "I already did. We had Labor Day plans." "I know. I already bought food." "I hope you kept the receipt." Marcus groaned. "This is insane." "No, this is what consequences look like. We've been going there for years." "Because I invited you. I'm not inviting you anymore." Ethan finally snapped. "You're blowing up everyone's lives over one stupid night." I laughed. "One night, you cheated and all of you defended it." "We were trying to help," Vanessa insisted. "You never helped me. By the time any of you called, my relationship was already over." Marcus rubbed his face before trying one last time. "If you're really selling the house, at least let us stay until we find somewhere else." "No. We need more than 30 days. "No. We've always paid. Usually late. You've damaged the house more than once and I let it go because I thought you were my friends." No one spoke. For years, I treated them like family. The first time I needed loyalty, they came to negotiate. Tyler tried appealing to my grandparents. "What would your grandmother think?" "She believed in helping people," I replied. "She also believed trust had to be earned." Another friend muttered, "You're acting like everyone's your enemy." "No, I finally know who my friends are." Ethan's patience disappeared. "This isn't you. I didn't recognize you in my bed either." Silence filled the hallway. Marcus looked at the floor. "So that's really it?" "Yes. I can't believe you'd throw away 12 years." I didn't. I waited a beat before adding, You all did. One by one, they walked toward the elevator. Ethan lingered just long enough to throw one final insult over his shoulder. You're going to die alone, Claire. No one will ever love someone this cold. I never answered. When the hallway finally fell silent, I returned to the kitchen and drank the coffee I'd abandoned before they arrived. It was cold, but somehow it tasted better than any cup I'd had since discovering Ethan's affair. The peace didn't last. Marcus and Daniel ignored the eviction notice, convinced I'd eventually give in. 4 days later, Rachel, my property manager, called. Marcus has already called me 3 times. He keeps insisting you'll change your mind. He'll find out I won't. On the 28th day, Rachel called again. They're refusing to leave. They still think you'll change your mind. What happens if they stay? We file for eviction tomorrow. It'll become part of their rental history. And they know that? I've told them twice. They still think you're bluffing. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The next afternoon, Rachel called with different news. They're gone. They finally left. Just barely. The truck didn't pull away until nearly 6. Any damage? Nothing major. She laughed softly. I don't think they believed you were serious until they started loading boxes. That night, my sister called. Marcus and Daniel moved in with Ashley, Daniel's girlfriend. How big is the apartment? 1 bedroom. For all of them? She laughed. 4 adults. For 3 years, they'd rented my house for far below market. Now they were squeezing into a 1-bedroom apartment that cost almost twice as much. Consequences have a way of collecting overdue bills. The rental house wasn't the end of it. A few days later, my mother called. Claire, were people planning events at your beach house? What kind of events? A birthday party and Thanksgiving. I frowned. Who told you that? Tyler's mother. Without asking me, Tyler had invited more than 20 people to celebrate his birthday there, while someone else had already promised relatives they'd host Thanksgiving at what they called our beach house. Our, not mine. Not the home my grandfather left me. Somewhere along the way, invitations had become entitlement. A week later, my security cameras proved it. Just after 2 in this morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. A hooded figure stood on the porch, tried both doors, checked every window, then searched beneath the loose board where everyone used to know I hid the spare key. I left empty-handed. I saved the footage immediately, not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd finally learned that trust without evidence isn't enough. The attempts to reach me didn't stop. My aunt called to say one of my friends claimed there'd been a misunderstanding. There hasn't, I told her. A few days later, the co-worker who'd seen Marcus asking about me stopped by my desk again. He came back. What did he want this time? I wanted to know if you'd become unstable. I laughed. I'm fine. I told him that, my co-worker said. Honestly, you seem calmer than you have in months. I was right. I wasn't happier yet, but I was finally at peace because I'd stopped trying to save relationships that only mattered when I was the one giving. Then Ethan's mother found my email address. I'd only met her twice, yet she somehow managed to write 4 long paragraphs explaining why I should forgive her son. The email went on about forgiveness, second chances, and Christian compassion. It never mentioned accountability, betrayal, or why her son had been in another woman's bed. I archived it without replying. 3 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, no one was there. Just a hand-delivered envelope stuffed with 8 pages of Ethan's handwriting. I read every word. The first few pages apologized. Then the excuses began. Alcohol. Olivia. A moment of weakness. By the middle of the letter, the blame had shifted to me. I worked too much. I'd become emotionally distant. I cared more about my houses than about him. The ending was worse. According to Ethan, Marcus, Daniel, and everyone else were suffering because I refused to forgive him. If you really loved these people, you'd fix this. You're punishing everyone because you're angry at me. I stared at the page for a long moment before laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Ethan cheated. My friends defended him. I simply stopped giving my time, my property, and my trust to people who had already chosen someone else over me. Yet somehow, I was supposed to be the villain. I fed the entire letter into the shredder. As the last page disappeared, I realized something had changed. The anger was gone. All that remained was clarity. And once you finally see people for who they are, it's almost impossible to be manipulated again. The apartment felt unusually quiet afterward. A month earlier, that silence would have been interrupted by group chats, favors, or someone asking to use the beach house. Now my phone barely rang. I didn't miss the noise. About a week later, my sister called. I've got an update. I was happier not having one. She laughed. Marcus and Daniel got kicked out of Ashley's apartment. What happened? No one's sure. Money, arguments, too many people, whatever it was. She finally threw them all out. So where are they now? Marcus moved back in with his parents. At 34? Yep. And Daniel's living in an extended stay motel. I looked out the window, thinking about how certain they'd been that I was ruining their lives. I wasn't. They'd managed that on their own. People often confuse consequences with revenge. The difference is simple. Revenge chases people, while consequences keep going long after you've walked away. A few days later, Rachel called. One of your former friends is threatening legal action. I laughed. Over what? They claim they've earned permanent access to the beach cottage because they've been using it for years. They think being invited gives them ownership? Apparently, Rachel had already spoken with my attorney. He asked 3 questions. Had anyone signed a contract? No. Paid rent? No. Received permanent permission to use the property? No. His answer was exactly what I expected. Invitations don't create legal rights. Rachel also told him about the security footage of someone trying to get into the cottage. Included in the response, he said, "If they keep harassing you, we'll have documentation." I agreed. The attorney's letter ended the situation almost immediately. The lawsuit never appeared, the angry emails stopped, and the social media threats disappeared as quickly as they'd started. It's amazing how brave people are until they have to argue with a lawyer instead of the person they're trying to intimidate. Not all the updates came through Rachel. One afternoon, a co-worker stopped me by the coffee machine. "Did you hear about Olivia?" I hadn't even spoken her name in weeks. "What happened?" "They transferred her." "Why?" "She and Ethan became office gossip." "I never told anyone." "I know, Ethan did. Apparently, he'd gotten drunk after work and bragged about stealing someone else's fiancé. I corrected him automatically. Someone else's fiancé. My co-worker nodded. He thought everyone would be impressed. They weren't. The story spread through the office so quickly that human resources quietly transferred Olivia to another department. When I heard the news, I expected to feel something. Instead, I felt nothing. The farther Ethan's life drifted from mine, the lighter my own became. A few days later, someone mentioned he was already dating again. "I hope it works out for him," I said. "You aren't angry." I was. "And now?" "I'm busy living my own life." It was true. I stopped checking my phone for arguments that never needed to happen and finally started paying attention to myself again. Rachel relisted my rental house at market value, and within days we had several strong applications. One immediately stood out. A young married couple with a baby, steady jobs, excellent references, and a spotless rental history. She forwarded their application with one note: "I think your grandmother would have liked them." That simple sentence made me smile for the first time in weeks. That weekend, I drove to the beach cottage alone. When I unlocked the door, the silence felt unfamiliar. No music, no crowded kitchen, no one asking for favors or treating the place like it belonged to them. Just the sound of the waves. Sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee, I remembered something my grandfather used to say. People show you who they really are when they think no one's watching. As a child, I thought he meant strangers. Now I knew he meant friends too. I spent the weekend reading, walking along the beach, and enjoying my own home instead of managing everyone else's vacation. The cottage looked exactly the same. The only thing that had changed was me. 6 weeks after catching Ethan with Olivia, I stopped measuring my life by what I'd lost and started appreciating what I'd gained. Peace, freedom, and the certainty that I would never apologize again for having boundaries. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Some mornings I still reached for my phone, thinking about people who were no longer part of it. But those habits faded a little more every day. The rental house was soon leased to the young family Rachel had recommended. For the first time since inheriting it, I felt it belonged to people who genuinely appreciated it instead of expecting it. That Sunday, my mother looked across the dinner table and smiled. "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter." She squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For finally believing you deserve the same loyalty you've spent years giving everyone else." A few days later, I returned to the beach cottage with a novel I'd been trying to finish for months. This time, no one interrupted me. No forgotten groceries. No last-minute favors. No dirty dishes waiting in the sink. I finished the book before sunset and smiled when my mother texted. "Enjoying yourself?" "More than I have in years." Watching the sun disappear over the water, I finally understood what had happened. For years, I'd mistaken being useful for being loved. Cheap rent, a free beach house, loans, favors, and endless help had convinced me those relationships were built on friendship. They weren't. The moment I stopped giving, most of them disappeared. The people who remained were the ones who cared about me, not what I could provide. My mother, my sister, a handful of co-workers who checked on me without expecting anything in return. I also joined a Sunday cycling group. It was wonderfully ordinary. We rode for a few hours, grabbed coffee afterward, and went home. No drama, no gossip, and no one asking me for money or the keys to my house. Occasionally, someone still brought me updates. Marcus wanted another chance. Daniel admitted they'd been wrong. Vanessa regretted taking Ethan's side. I wished them well from a distance. Then one afternoon, a mutual acquaintance stopped me outside a grocery store. Ethan asked me to tell you something. I nodded. He said he's sorry. He hopes you find happiness. She looked at me as though she expected Ethan's apology to change something. Really? She asked. You're happy? I smiled. I am. Did you meet someone else? No. Then what changed? I thought about it for a moment before answering. I stopped wasting my energy trying to convince people to treat me with basic respect. That was the moment everything truly ended. It wasn't the day I caught Ethan cheating or the day I changed the locks. It was the day I accepted that I couldn't carry relationships other people had already abandoned. A few weeks later, I deleted the last photos of Ethan from my phone. Not out of anger, but because they belonged to a version of my life I'd finally outgrown. The following weekend, I ate breakfast alone on the porch of my grandfather's beach cottage while the sun rose over the water. 2 months earlier, people had called me cold, dramatic, and unforgiving. Back then, those words kept replaying in my head. Now they barely registered. I don't pretend I never missed those years. I miss the birthdays, the road trips, and the people I believed my friends were. What I don't miss is wondering whether the next text will be another request for money, another favor, or another weekend at my beach house. I definitely don't miss explaining why betrayal should have consequences. The cottage is still mine. My grandmother's rental house is still mine. More importantly, my peace is still mine, and after everything it took to get here, that's one thing I'll never hand over again.